Hello, everybody. Welcome back to You Can't Win. Here for the second guest episode. This is Tom, co-hosting with Donald as usual.
Hello.
And joining us today is Big Dave.
Hello, everyone.
And how are you doing today, Big Dave?
I'm doing fine. Just dropped a new video on Twitter, and it's been received well.
Cool.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might know you from your videos on your Twitter account and your constant presence in every WhatsApp group that I've ever seen.
I love to communicate online.
Great.
Yeah, so I think today we wanted to talk a little bit about, the theme of the show is You Can't Win, different traps and tribulations that people have, and I think the idea was that we would talk about gambling a little bit today.
Yeah, you know what? I think a little bit I wanted to touch on the roots of gambling. When do you think the man really needed to start gambling?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
What do you think?
In my opinion, the explosion of it probably happened during the Industrial Revolution, when guys started doing the 9 to 5 or, not going out of the fields or joining the army or, hunting, gathering or, whatever it was before. Now we're all stuck in the cities. It's a little bit boring. Do you think that's a good take on it?
I think maybe different bored people might have come up with it before that, like pirates or something like that. People that were on the seas a lot. Maybe the sea gambling was a big thing.
True, but I mean, mainstreamed into society.
Sure.
Like everybody always, the Chinese gambled on what you would call it, that tile game.
Yeah.
Which I can't remember.
Mahjong or something.
Yeah. Mahjong. Indians always gambled on cards. For a long time. But I think we've lost a little bit of that edge, and so the average dude wants to try and have a little bit more excitement in their lives, and I think that's where gambling comes in. Modern life can be quite soul crushing and boring, don't you think?
I take your point. I think that there probably is a general proliferation of the various vices that humans have available to them. You got, I think, definitely an increase in drug use of various kinds. Probably an increase in sexual sort of, whatever you want to call it, indulgence or kind of excesses. I feel like gambling is really old, though. It really depends what we're going to call gambling, I guess, right? Like how we're going to define it, because I think the idea of like lotteries or betting on things, I think those have existed for a long time.
It's always been there, but I don't think it's been to the point where it's become a vice in older cultures. So I think it does feed a lot on the boredom of the modern man. I know for myself, fantasy sports adds a lot to the normie dad lifestyle that I have.
Yeah, I think I could agree with that for sure, that there's sort of as we're getting softer, as you said, that these kind of we just need stimulation in different ways,
Right. And, we get it from different parts of our life. I don't think I could ever, physically fight someone. I'm not that type of a person. The thrill of getting a punch, the thrill of...
I'll fight you, Dave.
One day, Donnie, one day.
that was... Oh, no. That was Tom. I'm not going to fight you.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
No, that was actually Don. Don, calm down, Don. Aggressive.
But the thrill of putting $500 on the outcome of a game where you have zero control is quite exhilarating.
Yeah. Do you think that kind of leaks into everything else, I guess, with gambling? Do you think that's just like a very, very low rent version of that? Is just sports in general and other games and stuff, I guess? Or is it like its own thing that's just trying to drive, I don't know, like its own extreme risk kind of thing?
I guess to a certain extent, it ups your interest in sports, right?
Yeah.
It gives you that personal stake, whereas you have that rooting stake anyways of your team against their team. But then once you put money on the line, it ups the stakes a great deal. And so I really don't like basketball,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
college basketball is super boring. But once the tournament comes around, the March Madness, betting on basketball is so much fun, and you watch these guys and these kids, and um, buckets are going in, and you're like, oh, you're freaking out, even though you have
yeah.
like no connection to them whatsoever.
I was just listening to like Joey Diaz with Michael Rappaport on there, and they were actually talking the whole episode about gambling. I thought that was kind of funny, like just how
Yeah,
that would
Michael
line up.
Michael Rappaport is really big on his fantasy sports, and he loves to talk a big game and everything like that. But I don't know. It's it's definitely like that northeast area, like where like Rappaport and Diaz are from. It's a big part of like that wise guy culture. Whereas for me, growing up in Canada, nobody could gamble, and then all of a sudden you could gamble at the corner store, but only in a certain way through the lotto
Yeah.
company. It's not part of life like it was for those guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was actually, I mean, the same thing growing up. We had the kind of like a lotto. Um, I can't remember what it's called, but just that kind of where you pick 3 games or whatever, or 6 games, and just try to get like a streak or something. You know what I mean? But like, it didn't seem that appealing to me because it seemed like pretty, um, like everything was kind of low stakes and kind of not really
Yeah,
like, I don't know. It wasn't that, I don't know.
same out here
The
in
first,
Canada.
yeah, yeah,
You couldn't just bet on a single game. It would had to be like multiple games and stuff. It was really weird.
yeah. And then, so, uh, yeah, so I guess the first time I kind of encountered gambling a lot and it's kind of like broad, I think was just poker stuff when it kind of blew up on television. It was everywhere for a few years, kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of those guys are poker guys are in the gambling world too. They have got that mind for numbers and everything else, and they've got that almost autistic viewpoint of the world where they can grind these numbers and keep putting in money, knowing that they can win 55% of the time. Where
Yeah,
they're doing well. Whereas the average guy like me, if I break even, and it's all about the highs and the lows, I'm not really doing this for my living.
sure.
It's more about the enjoyment, but the enjoyment can definitely get out of hand pretty quick.
So do you put like a fair bit of money into this kind of stuff, or is it just kind of you limit yourself or something?
Not anymore. Back in the day, I had a pretty good role going for college football, and that was pretty easy to gamble on. But now, basically, the highest stakes I do is in daily fantasy, where you set up lineups for the day in either Major League Baseball or NFL, and you set up a team and you go into a tournament against thousands of people, and you see how you can do up against them.
Oh yeah. So you watch a fair bit of baseball, or just track the scores and stuff?
Uh, I watch a little bit, but mostly the scores and the stats and things like that.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
like NFL and soccer
Okay.
mostly.
So soccer for international too, or just
Yeah,
whatever? Yeah.
all of
Okay.
it. It's all
Yeah.
good.
Cool.
But it's definitely changed things because you know uh, the average guy can never own a team, right? So you start up these little leagues and you're picking players and you're going against other people and you're trying to basically put your wits against a field and you're thinking you can pick the best players. So it's not just the money; it's a lot about the ego too.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. You know what I used to do all the time when I was younger was I would play. I think I've actually talked about this game before. I'd play High Heat Baseball, which is like a baseball computer game, and they had a like a draft mode where you would
Right.
just draft against. It was like it took all the players and put them in a big pool, and then you just drafted a team based on everybody. And I would do that over and over again, and like play a few games, and then do it again. It was just kind of fun to go through that process.
Yeah. Plus, you do the magic stuff, which I guess has its own kind of drafting quality. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, and actually, that's like my favorite mode to play in Magic is the drafting.
Yeah, and that's pretty popular. I mean, that's pretty big now, isn't it? It kind of has a resurgence or something.
Yeah, the new like the digital version, the arena that just came out, like that seems to be really taking off. I mean, that's how I got back into it. It's just so easy to get on and play, and it doesn't cost you like hundreds of dollars and stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
And like in the 2000s, like one of the biggest computer games all every year was the update to either it was Championship Manager and then it became Football Manager, these soccer games where basically it imported every player from all the leagues all over the world in soccer, and you became the manager of a certain team, and you took that team and you grew it, and you tried to get promoted or uh, uh, scooped up by one of the bigger teams, and keep going, and like maybe one of the national teams, like England, takes you as a manager. It's probably one of the most famous games ever. It's basically just an advanced spreadsheet.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But people love it and play it just because I guess it gives you that thrill that you're actually managing and taking this team to higher levels.
Yeah, there's a baseball game that's very similar called Out of the Park, and they do a version every year.
Yeah, I think it's almost the same as that, but with soccer, it's worldwide, so you can go up and down leagues and all sorts of stuff. It's pretty fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
So
The closest. So yeah. Go on.
you're into that, Dave? You play that game?
I used to. I spent a lot of time on that game back in. I think the last one I played was Football Manager 2005. But
Oh,
my
wow.
first, I had my first child in 2005. So since then, I've tried to keep my game playing to a little bit of a minimum.
Cool. Yeah, I mean the only sports game I used to play quite a bit was like NHL or something, and you can make teams in that, but not. It doesn't sound as autistic as that kind of thing where you're actually micromanaging. But I used to. I don't know. So I've never really done the gambling thing. Actually, that's one of my things is that I actually sort of personally have. I get tempted a lot to see it. Like I see it around a lot, and it's like one of those things, especially with like an economics degree or something where that kind of stuff is encouraged a lot. Like a lot of people get into that, like with finance and stuff. They play all those kind of, they just bet on different things, or it's very close to finance in general, kind of a thing. I found like people betting on different things and trying to figure it out. But I've kind of had this like moment where I was like, I'm not going to do this because I know that I'll just get sucked into it and I'll just, But I do want to get into maybe some of the sabermetrics kind of stuff around baseball and kind of learn more about that kind of thing. I know it's kind of like overblown in some ways, but I think it'd be fun to learn that kind of stuff.
It's interesting. It's good stuff. Like it's useful statistics.
Yeah, definitely in baseball, like the actual statistics of things is incredibly helpful, and it's sort of transformed the fantasy community. But one of the interesting things about gambling, like tonight, for example, we have in play tonight. A game I gambled on was the Montreal Canadiens versus Tampa Bay Lightning at home. I heard on the radio this morning that Tampa Bay's third string goalie was going to be in.
Mm-hmm.
So a stupid little thing like that can get you on and putting units in. So units is something that a gambler will say is their average bet for one thing. So when you hear somebody like the third string goalie and the Canadians are doing well, they want to get higher in the playoffs. So we put in probably about 4 to 5 units on it. And the first 2 periods it's tied up and you're sweating it. Now I just looked, and our Canadians are winning 4-2, and it's honestly it's a really good feeling.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here, I'm feeling it right now.
Cool.
So I won tonight, but tomorrow we'll hear the backup goalie for somebody is playing, and then that team will win 5-3 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because guys like me always tend to go on their emotions more than the actual cold hard data that the real guys do that go and grind it out in Vegas and make a career of this.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know.
Like, it sounds like you like the excitement that it kind of brings to your life, like a little bit of masala in your day.
Right, it's that masala in your Limca Cola. It's a famous soft drink from India, but like I don't know. I've been working as a salesperson for probably 17 years now. I've got 3 kids. I've been married now for 18 years. I'm 41. Sometimes excitement can come at a premium. So, say you put $40 on a hockey game and you see it's going your way and it makes you happy. Is that worth more than $40? Probably not. But at the same
Yeah.
time, it is definitely it adds a little bit of masala to the end of the day and makes you, you know, feel like, oh, uh, it's different from the average grind.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I it's never appealed to me for whatever reason. I feel like I don't know. I don't like these kind of things to mess with my money, I guess. Like if I want something to be exciting, I kind of want to I'll get invested in sports for like much easier like it doesn't take money to get me to like start freaking out about a sports game basically. Like if the sports team is from the town that I'm living in or it's a team I'm following, then I'll start getting all into it pretty quickly.
True, true. I feel that same way about local teams or my team or whatever. But how often is your team doing good? Like the chances are, it's like a 95% of the time your team's doing bad. Unless you're a New England Patriots fan, then your team's always doing good. Other than that, your
Yeah,
team.
I'm a Mariners fan, so
Exactly, right. You guys haven't been to the World Series for the longest out of any team in the MLB, so it's like it's that frustration. So kind of getting that, I don't know, enjoyment from the regular, just a regular season game.
Do you encounter like a lot of problem gamblers and stuff like within this kind of fantasy stuff, or just around it, or is it just kind of
Um,
it's more subdued in that kind of area?
Not so much myself, but when I listen to podcasts and things, you hear about guys that go on these crazy runs and they're getting money, and then all of a sudden they disappear for years at a time. It's usually because they've had to go into rehab and or whatever. They don't really have a real system.
Yeah,
But you know, uh, there are some. I listen to these gambling podcasts, and there's people that are putting hundreds of thousands of dollars on regular season games that don't mean anything to me and you, but
yeah,
to them, I don't know where they get that money or why they're doing it. Maybe they're sheiks or something like that. But you hear that this money's coming in on a certain team tonight, and last night $100,000 went on the Miami Heat, and in the first period they were down. The first quarter they were down 20 points, but they came back and won and covered the spread, and that person was okay. But can you imagine like having that disposable income of
yeah.
$100,000 just to put on a game out of the blue in the end of the season where most teams really aren't playing for anything? It's really mind boggling.
I
I
don't know
found
if it's always disposable though. I think sometimes people borrow that money.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of gamblers that are average, even in the DFS community where guys will buy into the smart guys that have a system and things like that. And I guess the same with poker. That a lot of guys buy into the high risk poker players that have that analytical mind that can grind things out. But at the same time, it's a huge risk. And you know, if you look at some of the guys that do well, they post their T4 slips, their tax slips online, and the amount of money they put out at the end of the year. Consider with however much they come back is pretty, almost even. Like, they've
Hmm.
bet gambled 1.5 million, but they've won 1.8 million. So they've made, $300,000. But can you imagine if you're putting it in every week and you're on
yeah,
a losing streak?
yeah.
These guys can ride it out. It's crazy.
I watched a documentary about like pit traders. Back when that was more still like a major thing in stock markets and options and all that kind of stuff. And one other thing that was just astonishing was that a lot of the people that did the kind of pit trading, actual like people that worked on the floor, didn't have the kind of money that you would think. Like a lot of them were just kind of employees, kind of thing that did it for a long time. But I mean, they were their own business, but like they kind of built it up over time. But the thing is that was interesting is that a lot of them are wagering huge amounts of their own money on margin, and just to facilitate the trades. And then it ends up being now they've got it down to a science where they're shaving a penny here and there off of it. Really, they're not making much money, but they make a fair amount of money over time if they keep doing the right thing every time. But they said that like a large number of them end up just going bankrupt because one bad trade and they're asked to leave, basically, right? Like one thing can go wrong, and the way that they kind of show it, like in the documentary and stuff, is just on a long enough timeline that happens to every single person that would do it, basically. Like there's so many. It's one of those things where it's like a 1% chance it'll happen, or like, a 0.1% chance or whatever, and then but over enough time, it happens to so many people that they just lose a huge amount in one day. And it's just it's kind of interesting because the kind of things they're betting on are just them themselves, they're just facilitating trades. They're not even really, they kind of have to guess where the market's going the whole day, up and down, but they invest all that time in just kind of, like then if something happens to the market where they make a mistake or they get stuck holding something, they're just completely screwed. So I thought that was kind of interesting too, that like it kind of goes, or if you look at like a lot of the kind of more advanced stuff now is all algorithms and kind of advanced, high speed computers and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, a lot of that is just, they're feeding information into it, but a lot of it is just guesses. Like it's the same kind of thing as like the poker, as you were saying, that they try to get like that 51% chance of making money or something and just kind of run with it. So it's amazing.
As long as you can make even 50.5%, then you're okay. So like stock trading is macro gambling, gambling on a macroeconomic scale. And, so many people have been either wiped out or made their fortune and things like that. But, I think that the average guy is investing in blue chips and looking for their retirement and stuff like that. Once they start getting into gambling on the market and they get that rush, it just becomes like, that thing where you're betting on sports and you're seeing stocks go up or stocks go down. The average guy, 95% of us, don't have enough information to make enough money.
Sure.
In the short term.
Yeah. Right? That was the thing that was amazing about like in the early 2000s, late 90s and stuff, when day trading became a thing where you just saw really just huge numbers of people try to make a living at it, just doing like stock trading online and stuff, just with a lot of it on margin, like a lot of it not their own money. And it worked in some situations just because the stock market was going up so much in different kind of like rallies and stuff, that it made it look to some of them that they were making a lot of money. But just a lot of those people ended up getting wiped out the same way because they just didn't have the skills. But it's just amazing. I went to the bookstore the other day and I was looking at some of the personal finance books, and one of them said 100 stocks to pick for 2019 or something like that. It was like their, and it's like, imagine how long ago the information in the book was, and imagine how, people are just going to get, screwed on that kind of stuff. It's just so funny that, in a thing where generally, if you've seen a press release on something that's like hours after this market has already completely reacted to it. So it's like amazing that these books are still coming out, trying to encourage people to, I don't know, push these kind of,
Yeah, pretty much. The average guy doesn't have that information to run with the market. But going back to the early 2000s, the dot-com bubble, there's so many dudes that I know leveraged their businesses, their houses, that were a little bit older than me, because coming into that time, I was, about 21, 22. So I didn't have any money back then, luckily. And so all these guys were getting this 20% return a month. And I would like talk to some of my smarter friends. They'd be like, Dave, you can't make 20% a month doing anything. This is totally, unsustainable. These people are going to lose everything, and it's going to be like, tears for them. And that's exactly what happened. Like so many people lost their houses, their businesses, their cars, got divorced because they weren't telling their wives that they had remortgaged their house to buy stock. All sorts of crazy Canadian stocks that had gone through the roof. Onyx,
Yeah.
BlackBerry, and things like that.
Yeah.
Brex, My uncle lost, I think, at least $25,000 in Brex, and he didn't have much money to begin with.
Yeah. So yeah.
It's it it's really difficult. So uh, you know, I think gambling, if you can keep it small, like the way I do, like where I've got a certain amount I can do every year. If I'm going below that or above that, then I have to have a little chat with myself.
Yeah.
And you've got your role, and that you got to keep it to that. But
Sure.
when you get caught up in it, it's easy to just lose perspective and think you're God. You're on a run of 5 straight wins, then the run of 10 straight losses happen and you're totally wiped out and you mortgage your house or something like that. And your wife wants to kill you or something,
Yeah.
it's so easy for that to happen.
Sure.
Yeah, that kind of happened to a lot of those crypto guys, I guess, huh?
I can imagine a lot of guys bought in at $19,000-$20,000 at Bitcoin. And I just heard like yesterday somebody sold or moved 20,000 Bitcoins to make the market move a bit. That is probably like the most risky thing to bet on right now.
Yeah. The thing that's amazing too about some of that kind of stuff is just that I don't know, like I think people do see experiences in their lives where people do win windfalls and kind of get money out of nowhere somewhere, or they kind of get like a really good deal on things. And so they get all this kind of like reinforcement of, especially because that's the kind of thing people will talk about. They won't talk about usually as much about the downside of losing or getting a bad deal or something, but not as much. So I think it's just, you get all these kind of like it's possible to people that they can sometimes say do really well in a business or do really well with a bet or something like that. So it does kind of give you this kind of like, negative information. I mean, like perverse information or something where you think that you could be that guy. Then it's the same. People always say that about like a lot of the different kind of jobs that, are high kind of like very competitive, like say acting or something, like, or becoming an academic or something where like like where a lot of people try it and then only a few actually get through all the way to the kind of successful career of it kind of thing. And I don't know, I think it's funny because there is that kind of mentality of I'm special, I'm the one that's going to get through this, I'm the one that's going to win the lottery or whatever, so
Look no farther than guys like Elon Musk or Jack from Twitter or whatever.
yeah.
They won the lottery basically. Their startup made the money, and now they're free to invest in other startups. 90% aren't going to make it, but a few guys from Twitter put a bunch of money in Uber, and that made money too. But how many hundreds of thousands of guys are just code monkeys in Silicon Valley making
Yeah.
up for bad investments in different startups that didn't work out? But we don't really hear about those guys.
Yeah.
It's just the average guy, like Elon Musk and Thiel. They started PayPal. How many payment companies went under and people lost everything they put into that startup? Went under with them. So like we have that culture, like the guys that win get the good press, but the guys that don't,
Yeah.
are sort of relegated to history, and we sort of feel like if we think about them too much, we're going to be depressed. But it's just there's nothing wrong with being average, I
Yeah.
think, and getting to this age, and sort of being happy in family life and having a decent job and enjoying that. That allows me to have my vices and not go too crazy, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, this isn't what's giving me happiness. This is just sort of like the icing on the cake. I might have a drink here or there, or I might have, I gamble a little bit, but you got to keep that in perspective. That's just the very like the 5% of your life where you can sort of do those things and you have a little bit of autonomy, because modern life has a way of like saying, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this.
Yeah.
So it's the way you're zigging instead of, zagging with life. So I think I'm blessed and that I've been able to think about that and, think, oh, I should be getting this much return on my gambling investment or this much for my daily fantasy. It's basically just to have fun and not to go crazy, and it's just for me to blow off steam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a really healthy attitude. I mean, for my part, I just stay away from it entirely. I think that's that works out for me. But if you can keep it if you can keep it contained in a pretty harmless thing, I think that's pretty ideal as well.
Yeah, but it is tough. Like, you see guys that do have huge problems with gambling and things like that. So, it's not for everyone.
I think there's like two things that I can think of that ends up going that way. One is when you think you're like the star of a movie, like that, so that nothing bad can actually happen to you. And like when you're young, you kind of feel that way, right? Like you kind of feel invincible,
Exactly, yeah.
and like you feel like the world is sort of there for you, and that you're not just like one person, and that there are happy stories and sad stories and just boring stories and all kinds of stuff, and that you don't know which one of those you are yet. And I think the other one is people that have some kind of like emptiness or something they're trying to fill, or some kind of like pain or anxiety they're trying to resolve, and it's just like that kind of distracts them, or it sort of alleviates those negative feelings for a second or whatever, kind of like a drug thing or whatever.
Yeah, and definitely those parts of life. And I'm in a good place now, so it's a little bit easier. So, like the name of the podcast, can't win. You're not going to win at gambling unless you can, spend your whole day looking at things. The best you're looking at is breaking even and having a good time. You might
Right.
hit a big jackpot here or there. I've hit those in daily fantasy, and it's great. But in the long run, they claw things back and whatever. So as long as you're looking at it as just for fun and you just want to break even, it's all good.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a good message. But
yeah, that seems like a good place to wrap up our little conversation about gambling, I guess. Maybe we can move on to the questions here.
Unless Don wants to move to Vegas with me and we'll buy a little place and we can
yeah,
do lines, run the lines on baseball every morning before they come out.
sure. And then and you'll just keep me in a cage, and I'll just like work through the numbers every day, and you'll just feed me.
Exactly. That sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, let me load up the Curious Cat here, and let's see what we got in the inbox. This I think would be a good one for Dave here. What do you miss about being younger?
I think one of the main things is waking up and not hurting. Like, I wake up and like my shoulder hurts most of the time, my knee hurts, and I'm just tired. Like when I used to wake up when I was like 23, 24, you'd wake up full of energy, ready to do whatever. But now I just don't have that in me.
Isn't it crazy how that works? Like I'm not. You're a little bit older than me. I'm like 31, and am I 32 or 31? Yeah. Anyway, you're about 10 years older than me, and I'm starting to feel a little bit of those things now. I mean, I remember being in my early 20s and just being able to like party all night and then get up after like 4 or 5 hours of sleep, if that, and just eat a little breakfast and I'm good to go.
Exactly. You'd have basically for me, you just have a can of Coke, have a hot shower, and you'd be ready to go again to do whatever.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. I think that's and I also I regret, not regret, but like I miss weighing less. I don't know, like I mean, when I was in my early 20s and stuff, I was a pretty thin for whatever, and yeah, it's just a lot of effort to get around a lot, and kind of, everything aches and everything is kind of, it is that kind of like, I gotta, I don't know, I gotta reverse it pretty soon, or else it'll just be so annoying. It's just, that's the thing that it is. It's just annoying. I don't like a lot of the debate online now is whether or not, it causes certain types of extreme health problems or something, but it's just I don't know. That was the thing about when I was younger, is that, I would, or you just tolerate more in certain ways. Like I can remember like sleeping on the floor at parties or something like that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't, I'm like, now if I wouldn't want to sleep on the floor, like I would make a big stink about it probably, or something. I don't know. Like it just, I don't know. Like my whole body is just kind of, I don't know. I agree with the degradation of the body.
Yeah, it's been definitely been tough getting older, but I do like being smarter than I was in my 20s. It's
Yeah.
definitely it,
Yeah.
that is really like seeing like how much I messed up. Not dwelling on it, but just sort of thinking that I could have done better here, but now sort of getting your head around a few things, it does make you feel a lot better.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, like, you had to make those mistakes. You had to do, like, you wouldn't know what you know now if you didn't make those mistakes. That was the learning process. So in order to learn
Exactly.
that, you had to go through that, so
True.
yeah,
Yeah.
just one of those things. Let's see. Well, you're both Canadians. Maybe you'll have an opinion about this. Any thoughts on the Quebecois question? I wonder if I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah. Quebecois. Yep.
Yeah.
How about you, Dave?
um, that's a tough one because so much of being part of a Western Canadian is hating the Quebecois because they're such a huge sink of resources for Canadians, and like everything's in French in Canada because of them. So there is that resentment growing up from our mostly right wing media. But when you grow up, you think like, who cares? That's my thing. Like now, like who cares? Like as long as they're chill. They're lately they've been trying to do like way more racist things to the Muslims and the Sikhs there. But you know what? They can sort it out. It doesn't bother affect me day to day. So like, and there's a bunch of cool Quebecois, like a lot of Canadians' best athletes and our most famous like pop stars are from Quebec. So it's like whatever. It all works out in the end.
Yeah.
Is
So
is Justin Bieber from there?
no, he's from Ontario, I think.
Okay.
He's from Donnie's neighborhood.
Yeah.
I was just imagining that Dave is like, well, they hate Sikhs and all that, but Justin Bieber came from there, so it's
he means Celine Dion. So.
Oh yeah, okay.
No, but no, I mean, I've lived in Montreal twice for about 4 years total, and I really love it there. Like I don't know, for some reason, I don't know the chemical reason why, but like when I'm there, I kind of feel like that's where I should be or something. Like that's my town or something. And I don't know. And then but so when I was younger, I kind of had the same kind of opinions on everything about, like as kind of like English Canada tends to have, about kind of considering the Quebec kind of like this kind of annoying place that just causes problems with the rest of Canada. But once I lived there, I really kind of came to respect the kind of, like, I guess it's also like from becoming left wing and stuff, that kind of stuff. Like the kind of progressive nationalist kind of stuff is quite big. So like a lot of the, basically a lot of the elected left kind of is pro independence and stuff. So that was kind of, I don't know, I kind of like came to agree with a lot of that stuff, just like, but I always felt like it's not my fight. Like it's not like, I would never vote yes just because it's not my, like, to secede, because it's like, it's just kind of silly for me to kind of worry about that kind of thing maybe. But I guess in law school, I'm not law school, whoops, but in my master's, I took some law courses in constitutional law, and the arguments they used to like try to break up the country kind of stuff are really pretty bad. Like a lot of them just don't make sense to me. Like they I don't know, like it's just like, so it went the other direction in some ways where I was really quite surprised at how uh, um, I think it would have ended up almost like Brexit did in UK, where like
Yeah,
so many things were not thought of that it would have just been like a giant mess and no one would have known what to do. So
yeah. And like when you think about the base of Brexit, it's good in that you're leaving this reactionary place, which is the EU, but it's the reactionaries leading to exit. So it's like,
yeah,
okay, what do we
yeah,
do here?
yeah, and plus like you actually have to negotiate. Like you have to. It's not like you can just break apart and then that's it. Like you still have to negotiate with the same people you don't like. Like you know what I mean? Like it's the like you have to. There's no way that just even just geographically, like there's no way you could have like it has to be an open border basically. There's no way. And people that like moved here and there, or like so many English Canadians are actually, I mean, like in Ontario, were born in Quebec. Like hundreds of thousands of people left Quebec in the 80s. So it's like, who gets citizenship, all this kind of stuff, like it's just it's one of those things where it sounds really good to some people on paper, and then as soon as you get closer and closer, it's just I don't know. And people focus a lot on things like, the federal government basically tried to intervene a bunch of times to kind of throw the election and stuff, or that kind of thing. And but it's like, yeah, but even at the end of the day, it's just a bad idea, like to try to do all these things at once or whatever, So
It's
yeah,
kind of like when there's like a married couple and they live together, they got a house together and all that kind of stuff, and then they want to divorce, but they don't move out of the house and they're still living in the same house together. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just there's so many things that like questions like who gets the debt and stuff that just like are hard to kind of, I don't know. So it's funny because even a lot of the mainstream kind of, well, not mainstream, but like the far left are actually quite divided on it in Canada. Like um, a lot of the different far left groups are kind of like, well, we don't actually care about this because they like the Communist Party, their position was always like, we want a new constitution for all of Canada. And so it's kind of funny because you get these debates within the left of like, I don't know, like some people are like, we must destroy the Canadian settler state or whatever, who then support Quebec independence. But then people are like, yeah, but Quebec's just going to be a settler state then or whatever, So it's just not, I don't know. There's so many like strange kind of, and it's funny how it's the thing that's kind of funny about it is that how visceral and immediate it seems to some people. And then if you kind of leave that orbit for a bit, you're just like, oh man, that doesn't make sense kind of thing. Like it is just, I don't know. It ends up being like a stages thing where they think that like by doing this, they can then get to the next step of doing something even better. But it's like that part never really comes. Like it's never going to come that way. Like, so I don't know.
So
Yeah.
typical Western politics, basically.
Yeah, I mean it's fun, but it is funny because also because a lot of people in Quebec will the different sovereigntist people will try to find links around the world to their cause. So you see stuff like, being like the Palestinians and the Quebecois are kind of united and stuff, and it's like, yeah, but not really. Like, I mean, it's not the same kind of really the situation now. And same with like
It's pretty similar. Come on, I mean, it's almost the same.
but it's funny because in Bernard Landry and like a few of the different sovereigntist major leaders in the past tried to also make the same point about Israel. So they said that like Quebec would be like Israel and North America, like we both won our independence and stuff, and it's like, yeah, it's not really a well thought out comparison either. I don't know, yeah. So
That's pretty funny.
yeah.
Let's see. Let's move on here. What do you guys think about this? I think that basically the only coherent politics is putting all conservatives in prison. But that's not going to happen anytime soon, so do you know any interesting math exercises I can do in my head while I'm working my boring part-time job?
So Dave, do you want to take a crack at that first, or?
Sure. I think once you sort of get a bit older and see conservatives, I don't know. Everything, politics is so gay when you think
Yeah.
about it, right? Like, once I'm lucky, I bought a house and things like that. And if I followed the typical way of things, I'd probably get conservative and say, oh, lower my taxes, and my kids are going to be out of school soon, so I don't want to pay this much tax and whatever. But the average guy doesn't think about those kind of things. He just thinks about how much money is going in his pocket and stuff like that. So you can't put your not advanced or whatever, just your more woke thoughts on other people. It just doesn't work. Like, you just gotta accept it and, do the best in your little circle and try and move on.
Yeah, so about the math side of that, MIT has like a lot of videos you can kind of look at, like download, of like how to teach yourself calculus and all that kind of stuff, and algebra. And I download them a lot and then never watch them because I don't know, it just kind of seems like a terrifying.
Because it's fucking boring math bullshit.
We're gonna find Donnie in front of a chalkboard.
Yeah. No. Well, I mean,
and Tom would be like, highlight them apples.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I learned part of it once. I had to like do the economics degree. I had to do calculus and all that kind of stuff. But like, I don't know how I did it because it's just, I don't know. I can't remember almost any of it, but like, it would be so helpful for like certain things like related to economics and stuff if I like knew it. I could like maybe do certain types of jobs or something. I don't know, but like, it's just terrifying to like, I don't know. It's like 20 video series about an hour long about calculus. Is just like, I download it like in like a like excited state. I'm like, this is gonna happen. I'm gonna finally teach myself this kind of stuff. And then I don't know. I download lectures about like medieval Europe instead or something, and maybe do those ones. So
yeah, math is fake. Don't waste your time.
Yeah, you can't win at math.
Let's see here. Well, I this will be a good one, I think. Are phones and social media a catalyst for political action or inhibitors of it? Sorry, I didn't see the politics part of this question, so now I just saw phones. Let me start this one off.
Sure.
I think that they don't really. I think it's neither of these options is really the answer. I think that it's just a technology that people use. It's a social technology. It's politics is just part of life, and that it's going to kind of inhabit all these different spaces, all these different technologies. It's just kind of, it's not that the technology causes any of these things. It's just sort of we will do politics in every technology that we have anyways. So that's kind of how I feel about that.
Yeah, so I'm kind of worried about this. Like, we got a federal election in Canada coming up in the fall, and I've already started getting like auto dial texts about it and stuff, and that's kind of really annoying. So that's my main contribution, is that I do not like the idea that I'm going to be annoyed by all these different updates and emails and stuff. And I mean, I signed up before for the NDP mailing lists, like donate to them once or something, and they ended up just sending like a few a day of different emails and letters and all this kind of stuff. And no one wants that. Like, even if you're like the most diehard NDP person, you don't want, I don't know. And I also got like a thing once in the mail that which mail is also a technology to me. So they kind of had like it was like the final year or something, like they changed the fundraising rules so that like there was only 1 year left where you could donate $10,000 at once. And so the NDP sent a letter that was like, please donate $10,000 to the NDP. It wasn't even like, check this box. It was like, please send $10,000. I was like, how did I possibly get on this mailing list? Like, who did they send this to? Was it like 10,000 people they considered like jihadists for social democracy or something? Or like,
they were reading like some pickup artist things, and they're like, you miss all the shots you don't take. Let's go for it, boys.
I don't know. I was like, yeah, because it was like max out for this, and it's because in the States it's a big thing, I guess. But like, Canada's not the States in that way. I don't think. Like, a lot of conservatives will give a few $100s here and there, which adds up. But like, they're not people that are like, I'm gonna max out thousands and thousands of dollars for like Justin Trudeau or something. I don't know. So, I mean, there are, but they're lawyers. They're not like just random people. So, yeah.
You got any thoughts on this, Dave?
Maybe back in the late 1800s, when it was coffee shops and papers, guys like me would tune out They would like flip the paper if it was talking about politics. The same way with social media, you just mute. I've muted all like the Democratic nominees' names and stuff like that, so I don't see anything about Bernie or Amy
Yeah.
Klobuchar. Like it's just the same like boring circular arguments. So it's up to you. You don't have to be involved in those things. I don't think.
Sure.
Yeah.
Are you excited for the federal election too?
Absolutely not.
Sure. Yeah.
Trudeau is just he's like Prime Minister Barbie pretty much, and
Yeah.
he's shown it. He's got no guts, he's got no vision, and the NDP has no guts, no vision, and the
Yeah.
Conservatives are run by like a drooling moron pretty much.
Yeah.
That's pandering to the evangelicals and stuff. It's bad. Plus, it's boring. So it's like a double dose. Like all the options are bad. Plus, we're super boring as Canadians. That's just our way. We don't have that flair of like American elections or whatever. It's so boring.
Yeah, it's going to be a bad election. I'm kind of worried the NDP is just going to get totally destroyed and then have nothing left to do or something. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
We'll see. Hopefully it'll be better than expected.
Yeah. So I don't know. The debates are going to be so painful. I don't know. So
Scheer is just such a mental midget, and NDP, he seat the guy, and it's cool, and but it's just basically like they tried to do the thing where let's get a ethnic Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
Who doesn't really believe
Plus,
in any either. So it's just like, okay, so you don't really have any platform either. So that's kind of annoying.
Yeah, I mean, everyone said that he was like super charismatic and everything, but then as soon as he started giving speeches every day in like, national media, they were like, well, maybe not as much as we thought or something, like they were kind of, I don't know, it just kind of ended up fizzling a bit. So I don't know, maybe he thinks that he can just give it his best shot this time and then stay in and see if he does better next time. I don't know. We'll see. But get some experience or something. It's funny because Andrea Horwath in Ontario, she's been leader, I think, since like, I don't know, 2009 or something like that. Maybe before the 2007. Anyways, she's already been through like 3 elections or 2 elections or something. And she's just going to stay on, I think, forever. I don't know. So she's the official opposition now, but yeah.
She keeps getting her head kicked in.
Yeah. So when she first ran, she said the party won't keep its socialism at the door. Like it would like actually be like a militant party or something. But she also had posters that said "can balance a budget in heels," and it's like, oh, gosh. I don't know. So it's kind of just a very poorly thought out campaign. I don't know. So yeah.
Anytime I hear the word budget, it just drives me crazy.
Yeah. So
I don't think they should let you guys have politics and stuff anymore. This is really boring to listen to. You guys should just have like a queen or something, and 100 years goes by, and that's kind of sorted out, and you don't have to worry about this.
Yeah. That's the Yankee oppressor trying to keep us.
I'm just the voice of the listeners over here. All right, guys.
Sure. The man.
Let's see. Let's do one more here. What do we got? How about this one? How do you pronounce Enver Hoxha? Well, that's how you pronounce Enver Hoxha. And how do you feel about the rise of sincere Hoxhaists online? I always thought it was kind of ironic that the guy's name is Hoxha. So this is, in case you aren't sure who I'm talking about, the Albanian communist dictator, Hoxha is how it's spelled. It's pronounced Hoxha. And that means like master in Persian and kind of like Islamic context. So it's kind of ironic because he was such a anti-religious guy. He was forcing people to eat pork and cut their beards and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this, Donald? Do you feel responsible?
No. I don't know. Like to me, I always think it's funny because I always associate it with our friend Ismail.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to E-Regime.
Yeah. And so he years ago would talk to me about stuff, and it was funny because he was probably one of the only people I knew that if I brought up something about like left kind of stuff, like some tiny group somewhere in the world, he would usually already know what I was talking about and usually know way more about the situation than me. Like I would kind of be like, did you hear that like this tiny communist group in like, I don't know, Tunisia or something? Because there was Tunisia after their revolution, whatever, had a party called the Communist Workers' Party, which was like a Hojist party, won a couple seats. And it's kind of like, it's Tunisia, and they're like, these like extreme left Stalinists won a few seats, but then they kind of changed their name and sort of like shifted a bit, obviously. But like, I don't know. So, and then he would be like, "Oh no, this is like," he would just tell me the whole situation basically, and his arguments are pretty like he's kind of good at like sophistry kind of stuff, like where he can kind of defend things really, really consistently within the kind of ideology that was in play. So he kind of knew all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought it was funny, and I kind of like. I thought some of it's kind of. I thought the arguments about it were better than a lot of the stuff that people kind of put against kind of like mainstream kind of left stuff. I thought it was kind of like funny and kind of like useful to think about maybe or something. And so I did make a lot of memes and stuff about that. And it has been just bizarre seeing people take these different positions that just as if there's like without the humor, and not even just not the humor, but like seemingly like they've got to pick some fights about it. Like they've got to get into it about like why, I don't know, and why Vietnam is still like a vibrant socialist country or something, and kind of just stuff that like I can't, I don't know. It's funny because it's defended in the most awkward way that is possible, and usually, I always say this, but I always think it's funny because it's defended in a way that like the people that were actually alive at the time that were debating these things kind of thing would never have accepted for a bunch of reasons. Like they kind of, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, I don't know. Like I see people kind of like using the kind of stuff about social fascism and saying about like, you know, how Bernie Sanders is a fascist or those kind of stuff. And it's funny because they're using terms and stuff that were like rejected and criticized by the party for decades. And it's like they're scavenging for those ideas in a way that they then also think that they're consistent with the people that would have criticized those ideas and did. Like it's just kind of, I don't know, it's just this big jumble. It's very, very strange. Especially because, I mean, these used to be like a few dozen people online would talk about these kind of things. And then all of a sudden it's like thousands and thousands of people have like all the flags in their bio and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, but the conversations got a lot dumber because it used to be nerds who would read the same books and kind of, it would be like a debate about those books, and it would be more like, I read this is what the book says, and then someone would say, well, that doesn't make sense, or yeah, sure, that I agree with that, and then you'd kind of try it out with like more normie type people, and then regroup and like figure out like what didn't work with your arguments and stuff, and it would be very like kind of debate clubby, you know what I mean? And now it's just become like a bunch of ranting morons.
Yeah. So, although, I mean, I don't know. A lot of those people I would rather have around than, I feel like a lot of the centrist stuff and all that is pretty much the same.
Oh yeah.
Like it's just,
that's
you know,
true.
So I do have to give a shout out to my Marxist-Leninist friends. So, yeah.
I think that kind of stuff's pretty cool. I've learned a lot more of it as I've come online and things like that. But definitely, a lot of my political awakening happened traveling through Europe in the 90s, and I had a bunch of Turkish buddies. So I think everybody should look into Kemalism more than Oxford. Ataturk was a great man, and
Sure.
he had some good things at that 6-point ideology. I think, you know, if everybody implemented that more so than whatever else, you know, wishy-washy stuff, they'd be doing a lot better.
So, yeah.
Yeah, okay, Dave. Have you ever heard of the like the theory that he's like a crypto Jew, that he's like a Donme type?
Yes, I'm a expert on crypto Jews, so yeah. And
that's a fun theory.
Also, our buddy Erdogan would be also a crypto Jew, but we'll see. Once I get blood samples, we'll be able to figure that out.
Sure.
Yeah, I know a guy, so hit me up after the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for Dave for coming on. I guess we're wrapping it up, and yeah, appreciated it.
Anytime. Next time, if we talk about traveling or something or camelism, let me know. I'm more than happy to chat with you lads.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. As usual, you can find us on Twitter at YouCan'tWinPod. We got a website, youcan'twin.info. We're on iTunes, Google Podcasts, all that kind of stuff. And shoot us questions whenever you can. We really like to hear from you guys. So thanks for listening.
Life is nice.
I'm a brown boy.